Hello everyone, this is Jimmy Cultist, back again with another logic video. Today we're going to talk about how to create a first-person shooter, a topic which I mistakenly believed we had already covered, but apparently not, at least not that I can find. We've made so many videos at this point, I forget sometimes. But yeah, we're going to go over the process real quick. First thing you're going to need is a camera rig of some sort. Now I've created this one, which is basically just the puppet's arms duplicated and in the aiming position, attached to a cube using bolts. And there's the various guns, which are mostly invisible and are selectively made visible using a keyframe or an action recorder. So set it to keyframe mode. They are normally, if I scope in here, gotta scope in a lot, they're normally set to invisible. But using the keyframe, you just tap X, and you can turn them visible. I'm going to degroup this real quick, just to save us some time. So if we scope inside the puppet's first layer, you'll see our little rig here, which is itself a group with a microchip stamped on top of it. And as mentioned before, all I did was get rid of the arms. Oh, well, not get rid of them, but duplicate them. I live cloned them so that any changes I make to the sculpt will affect these arms as well. And I made the normal body invisible from the waist down, pretty much. However, I did make it so that they would always cast shadows. I went in individually to each sculpt and made it so that everyone cast shadows always. And the reason why I did this is so that when you're in front of a searchlight, like say if you pass in front of a light in-game, you'll still see your shadow on the wall, but the visibility won't block the aim on your camera. But basically what we're working with is this little mount. Inside the microchip there's a teleporter, which I've called aim block. Not the best name, but you know, it works. It's set to match target orientation, and if you use L1 and square and open up this little menu, you can change the orientation by just pressing R2 and dragging this thing around. I have it so Z is facing forward and Y is facing up, which is generally the best approach. I've also got a little camera on here, which, you know, correlates with the gun. And I'm going to get into some specifics about the camera later, but for now all you need to know is it's on there, it's in the chip. And it's set to cut. I also made it so it hides imps, just in case. But inside our puppet we have a microchip, which, to be specific, is inside his puppet logic chip. And it's a chip called AIM. I copied the logic from the first-person puppet, which you can find here, mainly because it has perfectly mapped thresholds. All you gotta do is open it up and go in here to camera controls. Just double click and you can select all this, then press L1 and R2 and copy it in there. But it's got the remap threshold keyframe built into it, so if you want to invert the Y controls You know, it's really handy. And also the signal manipulators, their wave shape is perfectly balanced for this, and while you can do that manually, it's a lot more trouble. It's just easier to duplicate it. That's generally what I do. The only thing that's slightly different is inside this chip I have a tag called aim block, which you may recognize as the title of this, well, not the title, but the target of this teleporter. So basically it will go into position based off the orientation of this tag, which again, if you want to change the orientation, L1 and square, you can move it around. But once you've got it in position, then go into the camera pitch and animate body timeline, which you can open with L1 and X. And this not only affects the puppet's animation, the body animation, but it also affects the orientation of this tag. I've tipped it upward using precise move. About a 90-degree angle, I guess you'd call it, I don't know. Just grab it with L2 and rotate it up and down with the right stick to get the proper angle you want. And in the middle, I have the body set to a standard stance, and I've got the tag appropriately set to the medium point of the pitch. And for down, of course, I've pitched the tag down and the body so that the shadow lines up with what we're seeing on the camera rig. And that's pretty much all it is for that. I've hooked up the right stick local from the controller sensor, which you can open with L1 and square. And if you press X on these little menus, you'll see a lot of options. But the right stick local option is the one we're looking for, which I've connected here. And handily labeled it right stick local, just to let you know exactly which one you're supposed to connect. But that's pretty much how to create the rig itself. Now I'm going to talk about how to create the aiming of the rig. Or at least the bolts that you fire. And for that, we're going to need a projectile, which I've created. This is a group with an invisible sculpt, which is just a cube, invisible and non-collidable, and some paint flecks that resemble a blaster bolt or some kind of projectile, energy projectile. And I've got a mover set to local space, 45 forward speed. Overall dampening and movement strength is 100%. And I have a trigger zone that collides with foes and things labeled scenery, which if you don't know how to label things, it's simple. For an object, press L1 and square to open up this little tweak menu, go in here and click on one of these to label it something. And for a puppet, just press L1 and square over a puppet and do the same process and label it as a foe or a friend or whatever you want it to be. I also would connect this zone to an emitter, and the emitter emits this little splash effect, which is just a simple, kaleidoscope paint effect layered with another one to kind of, create extra effects on top of each other. And a little damage splash, so that when it hits things, it'll hurt things. And if you connect this object just emitted output to the destroyer, it'll destroy after the explosion is emitted, perfectly canceling out our projectile when it collides with a wall. So let's go ahead and go back here, and you'll see this little node to which I have connected the R2 button. I would go a step further and add this handy little calculator so that we won't have to put so much pressure on the R2 button to fire. Just a light little tap. Set it to greater than 0.02. That's very sensitive, so just a light little tap will fire it. I see no point in straining your controller by pressing R2. And if we go to this emitter, which I have set to emit once at a maximum lifetime of 5.0, you'll see the object to emit option, which if you just press X on this, you can select it. And change the orientation and move it around. I have slightly changed the orientation of the bolt. I don't believe it's flying straight. And I'll mention why in a moment. I've connected the object just emitted output to a sound effect and a little muzzle flash from an emitter set to 0.6 lifetime, and it emits once. Not very important, just a little bit of extra, flare. I've also got a little timeline set to play once with a keyframe on it that just makes the hands go up, creating a little recoil, adding a bit of effect and believability to it, creating impact. I've also got this, which is an ammo display. I don't really need it, though. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. Now, something we do need, and I don't remember exactly where I put it. Maybe it's in the UI. It's up here in the HUD. Ah, here it is. It's a chip. It doesn't have to be in there, by the way. It could be anywhere inside the puppet's logic. But it's the reticle UI, and we've just got this simple little red dot in the center of the screen. Which, it doesn't have to be dead center. You can move it to align with whatever your actual firing pattern is. But the main thing you want to do is you want to align the camera in such a position that it lines up with that little reticle, and then you want the emitter, if possible. It's going to take some trial and error. You want to angle your emitter with L2 and get just the right angle so that it matches with that reticle and the player has, definite accuracy. And don't forget that if something's a little off, you can actually align the camera to work with it. Like, if your camera's too far to the right and it doesn't really line up properly, maybe just put it a little closer to your actual gun so that you can get a straight range of vision or whatever, line of sight. Just keep in mind things that don't have to be so static, Be flexible until you get the right, the right amount of accuracy. Now, if you want a little bit of random fire, or I think they call it bloom, just go to keyframe mode with an action recorder. Open this up with L1 and square, and just tap it with R2 lightly. Move this arrow ahead, and just slightly tilt the shot a little bit, then slightly tilt it up, slightly tilt it to the right. You could create any pattern you want. I'm just doing sort of a cone or funnel pattern. And open this up with L1 and X. Duplicate and make them a little more even next to each other. Double tap, make sure that their smoothing is on for all of them. Set it to loop and just leave it active, don't turn it off. I guess we could call it bloom. Set it to a reasonable speed, 260 maybe. And that'll cause some randomness. That's pretty bad bloom. I would call that an infuriating level of bloom in most video games. but I just thought I'd demonstrate. If you want to make it less crazy, just turn down the amplification quite a bit. See, that's not quite so bad. Anyway, that's all there is to cover on the projectile front. Now, there is some stuff to do with the camera that I might bring up. The camera kind of has a problem where it tends to collide with things. You know, it'll clip through objects and such, and you don't really want that to happen. Now, I've kind of removed this problem, but I want to explain why it normally happens and what you can do to fix it. What normally happens, I'm just going to turn this off real quick, is your camera will like kind of phase through things and you'll get this awkward, you know, your arm is going straight through the wall, which, by the way, is forgivable. This is not a AAA, you know, engine. So a little bit of, like, you know, not colliding with things is okay. But if you want to diminish this problem, what I do is just create this big hitbox in front of the puppet. It's a big sculpt. And it's invisible, but it's collidable. It doesn't collide with friend, which is what my puppet is labeled. And it, too, is labeled friend. So that when enemies want to damage us, it'll still be considered, you know, a hitbox. And basically what it does is it prevents us from, well, when the power's on, I turn the power off. Turn that back on. What it does, though, is prevents us from going too deep into the wall. Works pretty nicely. You're still going to get a little clipping, but again, it's forgivable. Another thing is it can stop you from having too much friction or too little friction. Like if you want to slide along the wall real quick, it can look kind of janky. But it kind of creates a nice buffer so that you're not, like, you know, easily gliding along the wall. You can even make it springy or frictionless if you want to. That way you're just, you know, completely sliding like crazy. No friction whatsoever. Let's give it a test. It'd have to be a perfectly flat wall, I think, to really test it properly. But nevertheless, it's a good addition if you're making a first-person shooter. And although I scoped into the puppet and put this inside there, you could actually have it outside of the puppet if you wanted to. And if you wanted to remove it, just press L1 and circle, and you can scope outside the group. Just make sure it's grouped with your asset. Like if you're making this, make sure that it and this are grouped before saving it as an asset. Now, if you're just sculpting a brand new character, you don't have to worry about that. As long as they're in the same space, they'll be considered a group. But I just thought I'd mention that real quick. But that's pretty much the ins and outs of how to create a first-person shooter camera rig and projectiles, and how to have them properly align with the camera and reticle. I hope you found this helpful, and can employ this in your own creations. We need more cool games on Dream, so go to town. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this was an insightful video or otherwise enjoyable. If it was, then go ahead and subscribe if you can, and hit the bell to keep up with our videos. Also, subscribed or not, give a like. If you have any questions or statements, leave a comment. We try to answer all comments. If you like what we do here and want to help out, consider becoming a channel member. Alternatively, you can check out the link in the description to support us through Patreon. Until next time, take it easy. That's all for now.